Hey everyone, Ashton here, and welcome back to Precision Horology. Today we're going to be looking at the service procedure of a beautiful vintage OMEGA Speedmaster from 1969. So like I said, we've got this beautiful 1969 Speedmaster that we're going to be looking at today. Now, at first glance, the watch has a couple of issues. We can see that it's fully wound, but we've not got much movement happening. We can see our second hand is stalled, and it's just not working. Now, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that second hand is touching our hand here. That's what it looks like, because if we set the time, we can see that our watch is working. So there's one issue that we need to rectify. It's a pretty common problem, actually, the second hand sometimes touching that hour hand. It can be difficult to get all the clearances correct of the hands. In this case, that's what's happened. So that is one thing we're going to need to rectify. We can see our chronograph is functioning, but the customer reported that the chronograph has been stopping when it's been running. So there's probably something there that we're going to need to address as well. As promised, a 145022 69 ST, as we can see in the case back there. So we can see that we have a little bit of decay, I guess you could call it, around the hands. We've got a bit of the paint flaking off here. Here on the minute hand too, but all in all, for a watch from 1969, the hands look to be pretty good condition, and same goes for the dial. The dial is in very nice condition too, so definitely a beautiful example of a 69 Speedy. So it definitely looks like it's been serviced recently. I can see fresh oil in a lot of spots, fresh lubricant. So yeah, I would definitely say it's been serviced at some point in the recent past. I see some, like I said, some markings in the case back that indicate that it was serviced earlier this year. So it'll be fun and interesting to go through and see exactly what we find. Another issue is the depthing here of our chronograph wheel. These wheels are supposed to mesh equally, so when they run, the teeth are supposed to mesh in, but this wheel is actually situated too high, so that's another issue that we're going to rectify, but we'll get to that. So if we get these chronograph wheels out of the way, we'll be able to zoom in and have a better look at that depthing that I was talking about. Can you see how this wheel here is much higher? So we'll go ahead now and we'll start to remove the rest of the chronograph. So we have the watch completely stripped down at this point. Overall, everything actually appears to be in pretty good condition. I've had a good look at the pivots on our train wheels, and they look to be in really fine shape. There's not a lot of there's no scoring or marking, which is really good. Indicate that the watch has been well serviced, or serviced at least over its life. So other than those areas that we need to rectify, it's just generally fairly dirty. The movement itself, the oiling, it's there. It's not too bad, but there's a few kind of rusty parts too in there that we're going to remove some of the rust from, the surface rust, just to make sure that they're in tip-top condition. And generally just fixing those adjustments and making sure that the watch is cleaned and oiled properly. We're going to be changing over our center seconds or our chronograph seconds friction spring. This is an old style with Teflon coating. Omega don't suggest that that's used anymore. They suggest an upgrade for that part, which is just a regular steel spring piece. Another common wear point for these is the barrel arbor, is the hole in the plate for the barrel arbor. This one appears to be in great condition. There's no scoring, there's no marking, so that's really good. So we don't need to fit a bushing into there. One area that needs a little bit of work is our balance spring. It's just going to need a couple of tweaks in a few spots just to get it perfectly flat and centered. It's kind of hard to show on camera, but our spring is not quite perfectly flat. There's a couple of spots where we've just got, and it goes down and it's not perfectly flat with the balance. So we'll make a couple of tweaks and just to get that rectified, because we want to have nice flat balance spring so that we get good timekeeping results, good, even, stable timekeeping. So we have the Speedmaster movement, the 861 movement, out of the cleaner, and as we can see, it's completely stripped down. We've got our barrel, mainspring out of the barrel, all our components are completely stripped down, so we can get ready to start assembling the movement. So first, let's have a look at some of the parts that we're going to be changing. So the main components that we're going to be changing, we're obviously going to put a new mainspring in the watch. We are going to put a new friction spring for the chronograph runner, which we spoke about earlier. The older models had the Teflon coating. The newer updated models that Omega say we should change don't have that Teflon coating on there. They're just a straight steel spring. And then we are going to be changing the hour hammer piece. The old piece has a hole in it. We're going to be upgrading it to this new piece here. So at this point, we are ready to assemble the watch. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to go ahead and assemble this movement. So now with our base movement assembled, we're ready to assemble our chronograph. And the first thing we need to do is assemble the chronograph driving wheel. There's a specific process we have to follow with a specific tool for this. Our trusty Horrier tool. Now, Horrier tool, it has a micrometric adjustment that we turn. We've looked at this in previous videos, and we turn it down and we can press it and we can control how we fit our wheel on our watch here, because we want to make sure that we support the jewel underneath so that we don't push the jewel out. So it needs to be a fine adjustment. So we can go ahead and we can press our wheel down. Now, it's important at this point we don't press too far, because we need to line that up with another wheel. It needs to be parallel with another wheel. So we'll look at that shortly. And now we can assemble our cam and cam spring. This is the cam that controls the chronograph, that enables the chronograph to start and stop. So we have our cam installed and cam spring, and I also put our reset hammer in too. We're now going to put our pin in. Our pin here activates back and forth to release our chronograph hammer. So when we press our reset button, it pushes this pin out of the way, and that's what the sprung load, or that's when the sprung loaded hammer can move forward. So this is also a small sprung loaded piece, so we have to fit this spring here. Now we've pre-lubricated this piece, but we have to fit this spring here into its position, and we have to make sure things like that don't happen. It can be a bit of a finicky spring, this one. So we can see that that piece is sprung loaded. The next thing we want to fit is our operating lever. Now, our operating lever is what controls the cam. I also just want to point out that I've pre-lubricated all these components and I'm fitting them in. It just makes it easier for the filming process. So try and use, in older versions the screws were more rounded than in current versions, so actually no, I think the more modern versions are rounded. I'll double check that, but I try to use the same screws in each. So our operating lever is what controls the cam. It's what starts and stops the chronograph. So we can see here we have our operating lever installed, and our operating lever is what starts and stops the chronograph. It controls our cam, as it were. So with our operating lever installed, we can go ahead and we can install our chronograph wheels. Now, we actually had to change out our minute recording chronograph wheel. There was an issue with the rivet on the old wheel, and when the force of the hammer came round, to fix it, or to reset, sorry, it was actually loose. I tried to re-rivet it. My worry or concern was over an extended period of time it wasn't going to hold up, so I thought the best course of action is to replace the wheel, put a new one in so that it's safe and will be for many, many years to come. So we'll go ahead and we'll install our chronograph mechanism. So we have that installed. When we lubricate our wheels here, we actually only lubricate our chronograph seconds wheel. We don't lubricate our minute recording wheels. That'll create drag when we go to run the chronograph, so we only lubricate the seconds recording wheel here. So the next component that we're going to fit is our brake, and the brake acts against the it sits here and acts against the chronograph runner or the chronograph seconds wheel, so that when the watch is stopped, the brake comes across and then that wheel can't move. So with our chronograph brake fitted, we can see here it acts against that chronograph wheel. So right now it's acting against it, so it's in the stop position. And we can see that if we start the chronograph, that brake moves away, and then we have freedom there on that wheel. We stop it, and we see that that brake moves across and acts against the chronograph wheel there. So now we'll go ahead and fit the rest of our chronograph work, and we'll check all our functions. So at this point, we have the complete chronograph assembled. We can start and stop the chronograph. Start, we can see that our clutch wheel moves into position, our brake moves away, and our chronograph starts. And we can see that when we stop our chronograph, our clutch wheel moves back, our brake engages, and our chronograph stops there. And then what we can do is we can reset, and we see that our hammer releases, our small pin moves to the side, and our chronograph releases. But I've just noticed that my hammer hasn't released. So I'm going to have to do a little further examination as to why that's happening. So now the final thing left to do is fit the rest of our chronograph work. I fitted the cannon pinion here, and that's working nicely as it should. And we'll fit the rest of our chronograph mechanism. So we have our complete movement assembled now. What we're going to do is we're going to stabilize the loom on our hour and minute hand, because they look as if, well, they're looking a little fragile. And then once we've done that, we're going to install our hour hand, and we're going to case up, and we'll have the watch finished and ready for testing. So here we have the completed product. A beautiful vintage OMEGA Speedmaster with 861 movement. We actually had to end up changing the chronograph seconds hand. The pipe was split, and I tried to transfer the pipe over from a new hand, but it just wasn't possible. So I've put on a new center seconds chronograph hand there, but we've aged the loom so that it's more in keeping with the other hands and the rest of the watch. So truly a beautiful example of a Speedmaster. Just a lovely, lovely watch. So thanks guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the breakdown and rebuild. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with your friends if they think they'll enjoy it, and stay tuned till next time. Thanks guys, bye.